A&E Classroom now continues.
The Newfoundland coast, 1941. Winston Churchill comes by battleship to meet with Franklin Roosevelt. It is Britain's darkest hour. Yet here in the Atlantic Charter is born the dream of a United Nations, the dream of all men in all lands living their lives in freedom from fear and want. Dumbarton Oaks near Washington, 1944. Allied victory is near, and representatives of Britain, Russia, China hear American Secretary of State Hull say,
"It is our task here to help lay the foundations upon which, after victory, peace, freedom, and a growing prosperity may be built for generations to come."
San Francisco, June 1945. World War II is ending. Germany is defeated, and Japan soon will be. Inside the Memorial Opera House, delegates from 50 nations gather to perfect the United Nations Charter. They rise as one, their work done to signify ratification of the document. On this historic day, President Truman expresses the hopes of mankind.
The Charter of the United Nations, which you are now signing, is a solid structure upon which we can build for a better world. Let us not fail to grasp this supreme chance to establish a worldwide rule of reason, to create an enduring peace under the guidance of God.
And so is created the United Nations. In 1946, the United Nations finds an interim home at Lake Success, New York. Here the Security Council meets. And here is dramatically acted out one of the great blocks to the UN's pursuit of peace, the veto. Jacob Malik, about to take one of Russia's frequent walkouts, symbolizes the veto. One no vote, and the Council is powerless to act in any situation, regardless of how critical it might be. In 1948 comes warfare in Palestine. After a special UN committee has recommended that the former British mandate be partitioned into Arab and Jewish states. Finally, a series of armistice agreements halts the bloodshed. In Korea in 1950, the United Nations shows it will stand up against aggression. Forces under the UN command hurl back communist armies, and after long drawn-out negotiations, peace is restored in Korea. 1952, the UN is in its new and permanent home in the heart of New York City. Membership has grown to 60 countries. Into the lobby of the Secretariat building come representatives from every corner of the globe. This is truly the capital of the world. On floor after floor of the Secretariat building are accommodations for the staff of the United Nations and for officials of its many agencies. There are also offices for the press and other public information organizations. The General Assembly building includes the Assembly Hall, shown here, conference and committee rooms, radio studios, recording facilities, and a master control room. The General Assembly is composed of all member nations. It is the appeal body from a veto-paralyzed Security Council. For by an affirmative vote of 7 council members, critical issues can be referred to the General Assembly. And the Assembly is not bound by the veto restriction. Chief Administrative Officer of the UN is the Secretary General. Trygve Lie of Norway was the first Secretary General of the United Nations, serving from 1946 to 1953. When he stepped down, the General Assembly, acting upon the recommendation of the Security Council, appointed Dag Hammarskjöld of Sweden to the post. In his acceptance speech, he summed up the responsibilities of the Secretary General.
I bring to this task a firm will to devote myself without any reserve to the work carried out by the United Nations organization in pursuit of its high aims. I am here to serve you all.
Paratroops dropping on the Suez Canal in 1956 put the United Nations and the Secretary General to the test. British and French forces had intervened in the Israeli-Egyptian war, hoping to keep the canal open. Mankind teetered precariously on the brink of a third world war. Would the United Nations in this time of great crisis be equal to the challenge? The world watched and waited and wondered. Before the Security Council came representatives of all the nations involved to present their differences. Finally, with American backing, the United Nations voted to establish an international police force to try and end the fighting. Secretary General Hammarskjöld traveled to Israel to personally present the UN's plea for a ceasefire. After meeting with Premier Ben-Gurion, Hammarskjöld announced that Israel had agreed to withdraw its troops from Egyptian territory when the international force took over. As the UN jeeps rolled ashore, the British and French also left. Once again, the world had been spared an all-out nuclear war. But crisis was to follow crisis, and almost at once the United Nations was called upon to act. The new crisis? Soviet Russia's ruthless suppression of the Hungarian revolt in November 1956. The bravery of the freedom fighters who battled tanks with stones was etched in the hearts and minds of all free men. When the United Nations voted on a resolution to condemn Soviet intervention, Russia was on trial before the world.
The roll call will begin with Israel.
Israel, yes. Italy, yes. Jordan, abstain. Laos, yes. Lebanon, yes. Liberia, yes. Libya, yes. Luxembourg, yes. Soviet Union, no. United Kingdom, yes. United States, yes. Uruguay, yes.
56 in favor, 8 against, and 13 abstentions. The draft resolution is adopted.
By action and influence, by trial and error, the United Nations has become the conscience of the civilized world. The place where, in the field of atomic energy, President Eisenhower dramatically pledged his country's
determination to help solve the fearful atomic dilemma, to devote its entire heart and mind to find the way by which the miraculous inventiveness of man shall not be dedicated to his death, but consecrated to his life.
Here, too, Nikita Khrushchev had spoken to lay before the World Organization his proposals for disarmament, a plan that, as Khrushchev presents it, calls for all countries to effect complete disarmament within a period of 4 years. The United Nations is not just a forum for the great powers. Each of its 82 members has a place and a voice.
The right of people to their human dignity is one and indivisible.
It is true that the organization's history to date has been a troubled and not always successful one. It has done much, and much remains still to be done. But the United Nations is today, as it was on its founding day, an institution of promise in the pursuit of peace.
This concludes today's presentation of A&E Classroom. Thank you for watching. Please join us again on the next A&E Classroom.
The preceding program is part of Cable in the Classroom, a free service of the cable telecommunications industry and your local cable company.